Well, then
That
that
was
kind of leads me to the question that I was gonna ask, because you were saying that they didn't need to have a title matches. Is would they put Willow on this card, because we saw Willow defended the New Japan Strong Championship Friday night on Rampage against Emi Sakura in a fantastic match. Like, I knew it would. Like, I was. This is of those 4 matches were great, and of course I wanted to see Shibata and Lee Moriarty. Like, that was really big on that.
It was
But
a really
I
good
really
Rampage.
wanted this match because I am a huge fan of Emi, especially after watching Dark and Elevation for a long time. I've seen her wrestle for when Deadlock Pro came. I got to see her there, and I was like, and she's a completely different Emmy on the indie scene. And then of course I love Willow, and so then I wondered. And especially because Tony had said like he's the one who chose Willow to go represent ROH at Resurgence. Clearly, the ending was not what was planned, but he seems to be really happy with her. And so, if Mercedes is not cleared by then, do they put Willow on this show? Because last year at Forbidden Door, they did have one women's match. Assume it'll be just one women's match again this year. So would it be Willow defending that title?
Well, who's the IWGP Women's Champion?
Mayu.
Well,
because it's back in Stardom.
I mean, that's to me seems like the obvious thing. You got 2 champions there. I mean, there's 2 champions in AEW. You could run
a tag match.
No, you can do 2 champion versus champion matches if you want.
Yeah,
that can kind of fill the gap. Then, if you're talking about no singles titles, like I personally, I just don't see, because we got the G1 starting soon. I don't see an IWGP singles heavyweight championship match happening. I think Sonata's going into that as world champion,
right?
And I don't know. You could do it like Mayu Iwatani and Willow and Statlander, and who else? Who's the women's? Oh, Tony Storm.
It's Tony.
Tony Storm. Yeah, she just grabbed it.
Oh, Brad. You know what? I think I have heard this. Brad said Stardom has the big show the same day as Forbidden Door. He believes so. Then that would take Mayu out of it.
It's I don't know. I mean, like, you could do that though. I mean, like, why not?
I would prefer for them to. I would like to see 2 women's matches on there, but
The thing is though, like, if it's a New Japan is a men's promotion, and you're promoting this as a crossover, so it's naturally going to be dominated by men's matches.
Right.
Like, if it was the crossover with Stardom, obviously you'd expect more women's matches. So that'll be what it'll be, I guess. It's I don't know. I mean, like, the only problem is Willow is not exactly an outsider, so you might have to bring someone from Stardom over, because Willow's just an AEW regular. There's nothing exotic about bringing the New Japan Strong Champion, and that's the problem. Is like, I think that was where a lot of the disinterest in the Tony Storm, Thunder Rosa match came at the Forbidden Door previous. It was like, there's all these like dream matches happening with Sting and Shingo and all this, and then it's just like an AEW title match, and you're like, okay, well, that's just an AEW match.
Right.
Whereas, like, where are we getting? Because I mean, like, I don't know, bring in what's her name, Samira Natsu, bring her in from Noah. Like, the doors are open there. Bring
well, they're doing the Noah crossover, so they could definitely bring in anybody that they want. I mean, they've got the All Together show next Friday. We've got Friday, and then
that's the thing. Like, there's a lot of this is the problem I have with the talk about women's wrestling is a lot of people seem to think that Japanese women's wrestling begins and ends with Stardom, and it very much doesn't. Like, Tokyo Joshi Pro, Sendai Girls.
Oh yeah, and they were actually. I mean, we actually talked about it last week. You know, Nyla is going back to she's going to TJPW in a few weeks, and she started. She was part of Sendai, because like when I interviewed her a couple years ago, like we talked about the Sendai stuff, and like she loved her time there and was like wanting some of the Sendai girls to be in AEW. So like this would be a great way to do that. Daza says AEW should finally work with Stardom. The women's wrestling on the show would improve massively. Well, and it would probably also expose some of the women on some of the AEW women, I think. And you got to be careful with that on a big show. Brad says Willow versus Miyu Yamashita, because she's here. She's wrestling in America currently. Willow versus Maki Ito. Like, I would love Maki. And
she's also floating around too, I think.
Yeah, she's been wrestling.
She was in Detroit. She was on
she's been doing some GCW stuff. She's been doing some other indie stuff I think Miyu just did an indie show last night. I think she do Defy last night, or no, Prestige. I think is where she was at last night. So she's here. If they went that route,
They should bring in Miyu Watanabe from TJPW, and she can do her
that'd be
a
good.
weird hand thing that she does, and then do the giant swing. I think I love about Miyu Watanabe is like she looks like, I don't know, like she dresses like an idol singer. She's got this like very kind of like girlish face, and then she wrestles like Claudio Castagnoli, like, all power moves and stuff.
That's
and
awesome.
like they always put her in with the big foreigners. And
Well, then
she's,
that
like,
would be a
fucking
great.
good.
That sounds like a great match with Willow then, because Willow is such a, especially with her doing the strong title, and like that's what she's talking about is like the strength as like, as a wrestler and as a woman and things like that too. Brad says, I think an issue is Rossi, the Stardom owner, has in an interview that he doesn't want to work with AEW. He'd rather work with WWE. Well, good luck with that, Rossi. and he said Stardom booker, not owner. Well, you have fun with that, because especially because Vince is back. Yeah, good luck with that. He can't even book the women he has.
Well, the thing with like, the women in Japan, like they're at such a high level.
Yeah.
And I think I don't understand why, if I'm Tony Khan, I don't just essentially go, like I would have went in and bought out Stardom before I'd bought out, or TJPW or somebody, before I'd go after New Japan, almost, just because the women in Japan have a generational advantage over the women in the US when it comes to like training. There's no, like, you think back on the Attitude Era, which is 20 years ago now or whatever. Like, there was no real high level women wrestling at that time in the mainstream in the US. At the same time, you look back at, say, even the end of the 90s in Japan, you still had Manami Toyota, you still had Aja Kong, you still had like a lot of stuff going on, even though All Japan Women died in the mid 90s. There was still a lot of talented performers there, and the people who are in their 20s now in Japan have learned from them and have worked with high level wrestlers. Like I often think about, like, when you see like the young women coming on up on the indies, like especially in a country like Ireland or whatever, they're stuck wrestling the 4 or 5 women that are local to them. You know? And that's not a lot of people to learn from. Whereas the guys have way more people to learn from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing in Japan. Like they just accelerate at a higher level because they got so many better opponents to work with.
Right. And yeah.
So it is something I'd love to see. I'd love to see like more cooperation between those companies, because I said before, I don't care what the next Okada looks like or where they're from or wherever. I just want another Okada, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just train them and get them ready. And I think we're going. It's going to take a long time. I think this is probably going to take longer than we think in the US to have like that Japanese level of women's wrestling. It's not impossible, but it's just going to take.
And you're seeing more indie women wanting, like, they know that Japan and Mexico are like where they need to be to get better. Because I mean, like, even Jade has said, like, I want to go to Japan. Like, and then you see what Mercedes has been doing. Like, they know that, like, Japan, and you see so many women, like Billy Starks has already wrestled in Japan. And so, like, you see, they know, like, okay, if I want to get good and want to get, or actually not good, like, if I want to be great, I have to step up my game. Like, I have to go to Japan and I have to wrestle these women there because they're the standard.
Like, they have a training culture there as well. I think what you see, it used to bug me when I go to like shows and I'd watch 2 women wrestle, and they're both like 150 pounds and 5 foot tall, and they're wrestling like 2 guys who are 300 pounds and 6'5".
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, because you learn how to wrestle. The Mountie taught you how to wrestle.
Yeah.
Like Whereas then when you watch the Japanese wrestling or stuff from Mexico, they were trained to wrestle for their size, and that's I will say this though. One thing's missing from women's wrestling is there's no, like, we need more Aja Kongs, or we need more Dynamite Kansais. We need like that style of like female Vader to make a comeback.